Hello, everyone, and welcome to the latest episode of VOX VOMITUS. I am your host, Jennifer Ann Gordon, the author of the Kindle award-winning novel, Beautiful, Frightening, and Silent, as well as Pretty Ugly and the Hotel series. Joining me today, as always, is my VOX VOMITUS vixen, my co-hostess with the mostest, Allison Martine, author of the BIRDBOX, which includes the award-winning novel Dibs, Since September, Move on Melinda, and Climb the Salmon Ladder. Joining us today is the one, the only, Mr. Eryk Pruitt, author of Something Bad Wrong. Had you watched our little pre-show thing, you would have seen Allison and I kind of geeking out to probably the highest extent of our abilities about how amazing.
To watch that because all of
Nobody
that
wants
spoilers.
I know it's all spoilers.
We have to get it out before we accidentally vomit it on the opening, which we are not supposed to do.
We're not supposed to do spoilers. I'm just going to say I legitimately almost wore a bloody nurse's outfit for this podcast, and then I realized that would probably be in bad taste.
Bad taste. I said no costumes. And you introduced Eryk as Mr., but everyone on social media, you are Reverend. Are you ordained?
I did get ordained. Yes,
ma'am. Nice. See, you can't call him Mr. when he's a reverend. We should be maybe crossing. I don't know.
I've married 4 people, and they're still married. So I'm 4-0, but I did 1 vow renewal, and they were divorced shortly after. So,
all right. So now we've got some like weird kind of superstition stuff there. Yeah. Did you marry them in your bar? Because you are not only a reverend, but you are a bar owner, a podcaster, a film writer, a novelist.
And
Eryk.
Now I'm the editor of a short fiction magazine called Dark Yonder, and this is the 2nd issue. It comes out tomorrow.
Yes. Oh, a little plug right there.
We're gonna need to get the link and stick that in comments too. And it's Dark Yonder, like
Dark Yonder. This is the 2nd issue. It comes out tomorrow. The 1st issue came out in January. It will be a quarterly.
Very nice.
I love it.
Well, congratulations,
Eryk. Congratulations on everything, including Something Bad Wrong being a Kindle first reads book we're in April. I know. I'm like, we are in April. So basically, everybody who's watching this now, watching the replay, if you are an Amazon Prime member, you could get this book for free. And here's the thing. I got it for free. I already have it pre-ordered as a hardcover.
Like, I needs it.
And I have the audiobook pre-ordered. So
dude, that audiobook is crazy. They showed me
I have had it 3 times.
I want the audiobook.
Dude, the audiobook is nuts. They sent me the voices and asked for like approval or any notes on the voices. And they have 6 different voices.
Are you kidding?
And,
okay,
yeah.
I want to guess who the voices are. You got a voice for Jim? Jess? Do you have Dan, and how smarmy is he?
I have Dan. He's spot on.
If he's played by John Hamm.
We have actually my casting for Dan Decker was always James Vanderbeek. But like he was in my head the whole time I was writing that thing. Vanderbeek. But the POV that they have for the main villain, which is revealed late, is so good.
Okay,
if I'd have known that it had something like that, I would have written more POV scenes for him.
Like, if I would have known he would have gotten to talk, and this person, that voice would be like, everybody, villain all day long.
Villain all day long.
Good.
Villain.
So, Eryk, before we get super into, obviously, we've already gotten really excited about Something Bad Wrong. Please tell our viewers and our listeners a little bit about you as an author, as a human, as a man with a Viking name.
There you go. It's a touch Irish. My name's Eryk Pruitt. I got my start writing short films and won some short horror films. We won a lot of stuff, and then everything kept going from there. I started writing short horror things, but I've always lived amongst people that skirt the other side of the law. So I thought it'd be fun to tell some of those stories. So my first 3 books in my short story collection are mostly crime novels based on the point of view of the criminal. And then after an experience I had where I worked with the Orange County Sheriff's Office for 2.5 years on a cold case, and we turned that into a podcast called The Long Dance.
We want to talk to you about that, but okay.
Excellent. Based on that experience, I had never worked that closely with actual law enforcement before, and I got to do all kinds of things with them. Like I got to go and collect DNA. I was there for a photo lineup. I went through the highs and lows that they went through. Like
were you
in got everything on the killer, and then like you've got it, and then like the DA won't go after it, and so cops deal with that all the time. They deal with it on a regular basis. I did it once in my life, and I was so heartbroken I couldn't get out of bed when we found out the DA wasn't going after the guy. So then I took those experiences and wrote something bad wrong.
Nice. Okay.
In the meantime, I got a bar. I work at a bar. We do noirs at the bar there. Lots of literary events, lots of music events. That's pretty much where you'll find me.
I feel like, I mean, I interviewed you, like full disclosure, I interviewed Eryk and Sean Cosby, S.A. Cosby, for a kind of noir at the bar episode of a podcast that I was co-hosting at the time. And Eryk, you were doing this from your bar. You were like in the back room. I expected you to be there today, but I'm
look like you're not in a bar right now.
No, we got employees now. We got people that work for us. So
I know we were deep in the pandemic at the time too. So it was just
running a bar during the pandemic.
That wasn't fun.
No.
And it wasn't fun shortly after the pandemic either, because man, everybody was all crazy. But
as somebody who I used to be and/or still am for my day job, a dance teacher teaching social dance. Yeah, during the pandemic, that was not fun to like, oh, how can we do this thing where we have strangers dance with each other 6 inches apart?
Right.
You can't. That's when I realized I had no backup plan. I better start writing horror and crime.
Exactly.
Because that's like money right there.
Dude, in the really, really scared and desperate times of the pandemic, I wrote romance.
No, take that
I'm
back.
sorry, I'm pointing at you, Allison.
You're pointing at me, but you're pointing at the camera. You have to like, I'm over here.
Also, Eryk, did you write romance under a pseudonym?
Oh, I wasn't writing that shit under my name, dude.
Yeah, is it out there in the world,
and now I'm
was
going
it just for comfort?
No. I wrote it for money.
I love this.
Work for me for money. That's for sure. But,
I prostituted the hell out of myself, and it was horrible because I thought I was a good writer, and my two bosses were two women. And I would turn this romance in, and I would get notes from these two women on my sex scenes on how to improve them. And, like I'm a professional, but after a while, that's just chipping away at the damn self-esteem.
A professional writer.
Can you what you're a professional at?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. Writing it.
Well, you did mention you were prostituting yourself, so I just want to clarify what your endeavors truly are.
Capital P prostituting.
Okay.
It was a pandemic.
Also with a capital P.
I'm loving the alliteration.
It's true. You're a pandemic prostitute. It's
well now, gosh, I am so problematic pandemic prostitute.
Yeah. No, I want to clarify something you said earlier, only geographically, because you say Orange County, that's Florida?
No, we're in North Carolina.
North Carolina. Why do we all have Orange? I live in Orange County, but I'm in California, and I didn't realize other people had Orange counties besides me.
That is such a California thing to think.
It's true. No, hello. We had a whole show, the OC, and like Real Housewives of Orange County. It's here in California. No one's thinking one of the Carolinas, North Carolina, South Carolina.
Well, yeah, I think because of the
better of
California and Florida get an Orange County because they grow oranges, but all on the East Coast, all those British colonies and stuff, we get orange counties because of House of Orange.
Oh, totally different orange. Yeah. Like, nope, is that Dutch? I think it's Dutch.
So, Eryk, are you born and raised North Carolina? Because you've got a lot of. You're Texan.
Yeah, recovering Texan.
I feel like I went to Texas multiple times in my life, but like once for a dance competition, and I'm still a recovering Texan.
Oh my goodness!
But that was because of the dance competition part of it.
Oh man,
they wore denim dresses.
Texas is a pretty unforgiving place.
It is.
It was like hotter than I've ever experienced anything in my life.
And that's like, and that's fucking November, man.
Yeah, it was fall, and I was just I'm dying. My hair is huge.
I was there in August. It was unpleasant.
Oh, I would never go back to Texas in August.
Yeah, I was there for work, so it was not exactly by choice. And I came back and was down a husband. That was unsurprising there. Okay, anyway, that is not the point of the story, but it was
Texas
hot
will
there.
Take your husband.
Texas
will take you. I feel like that is really a great title
for a t-shirt.
I'm like, Texas Will Take Your Husband. Also, Texas Will Take Your Husband could be like your next romance novel, Eryk.
Yeah,
I'm done with romance.
Done now. Whoop, off. So let's talk a little bit, and by a little bit, I mean a lot, about Something Bad Wrong. Do you have an elevator pitch for it? Because I will say this. I texted my agent, who I love her, Paula Mounier. She loves crime. She loves, and I was just like, I know you have enough
books.
on.
She doesn't love committing it. Let's really
She doesn't love committing crimes, but I know she has enough to read.
Practice.
I know she has enough to read, but I was like, if you're ever going to read a book for fun, you need to read Something Bad Wrong, which is equal parts police procedural, true crime, podcast mania, beautiful exploration of Alzheimer's disease. And I think I called it 3 other things. And she's like, well, I just bought it.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
But it wasn't a good elevator pitch because it had way too many words. So do you have an elevator pitch?
Yeah, I say it's a story of a deputy in the 1970s, a story deputy in the 1970s who catches a really big case right at the same time he discovers he's suffering from Alzheimer's disease. And then 50 years later, his granddaughter, who he's never met, starts a true crime podcast about that case that had never been solved and why.
That's a better pitch.
That's a much better pitch than what I said. Also, I got chills, even though I've already read it and know everything. I'm like, I want to read that book.
Well, and you also said something, but then okay, Amanda Demore says, that sounds awesome. And Amanda, go get the book. It absolutely is awesome.
Amanda is one of my dance friends and one of my very, very good friends in life. Amanda, read this book.
Yeah, when you say dance friends like this, it sounds like you're not really dancing, but she does mean dancing. So stop using the quotes. You mean dance, like actual dancing.
Mm-hmm.
Sure. Okay. No,
we do. I do mean dancing.
What kind of dancing is this? Like the modern dancing, or is it ballet, or what kind of dancing?
So I technically teach ballroom dancing.
Oh wow.
But I also had a burlesque and vaudeville troupe for many years until COVID kind of shut that down. But we were dark, quirky. We did stuff about Edgar Allan Poe and the Salem witch trials. But it was so.
Dude, I love that. I love it. We do burlesque. We have a burlesque troupe that comes to our bar and performs every once in a while. So
and next time I'm in North Carolina, I'm just gonna call you up and be like, hey, do you want me to do a weird crime horror reading and also weird stripper thing where I wear my 9-foot wings?
Do I look dumb enough to say no?
No.
We're all quiet.
There's Ed Amore on the bottom of the screen.
I love Ed.
This book is amazing, and so is everything Eryk writes. One of the best in the biz, and that is high praise from the someone else who does it pretty damn well.
Yes, he does. His book that came out in January was
so good.
I was gonna say, do I still have my scary mask around here?
Oh my god,
I do.
I'm like,
I don't want to see it in my car. That's where
it's in your car.
Oh,
That's kind of terrifying, Eryk, that you do that. But it's No Home for Killers.
Anything for a friend, Ed.
And I'm looking for my I want to say burlesque now instead of burlap.
Yeah, our burlesque sacks.
Can you do
a different type of outfit?
Burlesque? I don't
burlesque. I mean, you could itchy for sure. So. I mean, okay, obviously, Eryk, you're here. You're on a podcast with us. Allison and I are podcast people. I am a true crime podcast person. I love it so much. You are not. I get that because you don't like sadness.
I read sad and scary things because you make me. And then I'm like, why do I love this so much? Jennifer, you're corrupting me more.
I'm corrupting you. So, Eryk, you said before we went live, and then I think again while you were talking, you wrote and produced a long series true crime podcast about, I did my research, some Valentine's Day murders.
Yes, ma'am.
How did you stumble upon the story, decide to go full armchair detective into that?
An investigative reporter moved to town, and he was looking for a partner to write a long form piece.
I love that.
And he wanted to find something, so we each went home to look up 5 subjects, and then we were going to meet for coffee and figure out which one. I did one. Once I came across, what
you're like Valentine's Day murders.
I was like, dude, you're not going to find anything more interesting than this. And it was a sensational unsolved crime from the 70s. And we went to the police, and we did our digging, and we went to the police who had the case, and they basically told us, kick rocks. We don't work with journalists on active cases. And so we went and did our own research for like 8 months, and then we came back to the cops. And this time it came with a folder filled with everything, and the first page was the name of my
Was it a trapper keeper?
It was close. It was close. The first page had the name of my suspect and all the reasons why I thought he did it. And the detective realized that we probably had more than they had. And he went to the sheriff and the family members and said, hey, I think we need to work with these guys. And we did for like 2.5 years. We pursued several suspects. We collected DNA. We did some photo lineups with living witnesses. And it was really intense. It's called The Long Dance. It's 8 episodes long. And yeah, it's the thrill of my life. Biggest heartbreak I've ever went through as well.
I can't eat, no spoilers, but yeah, like I feel like cold cases are already going to be tricky as it is because things have changed in the past, we'll say 50 years, whether it's how people collect evidence, how evidence is stored, what people remember, communication, a lot of stuff with like, obviously different, police departments not super working with each other. Allison and I differ here. I am a huge true crime. I don't want to say fan because that sounds really aficionado. And after I moved back to New Hampshire, like 3 weeks after my husband and I moved back here, about 4 blocks from our house, some barrels were found in the woods that contained bodies from a murder that was like 40 years ago. And that became the podcast BIRDBOX from NPR. And that was like right outside, yard. Like basically like the lake that we would swim in. That's like a minute from our house, was a minute from our house at the time.
Maybe don't swim in that lake.
I know.
You don't know what's in the lake. In fact, you might know what's in that lake.
Don't climb into those barrels. That's for sure.
Yeah, like I know.
Stay out of barrels.
Never go into a barrel.
Stay out of barrels.
I wanted to ask then, how much did you pull from that to put into the murders here? I mean, at least there's a holiday theme. You switch days, so now it's Christmas Eve instead of Valentine's. But I mean, we've got some similarities between. Are you Dan Decker or are you Jess Keeler? I need to know.
It's a Jess.
I like to think there's a little bit of both of us. There's a little bit of me in both of them.
Okay.
Dan Decker was actually a lot of fun to write. He was one of my favorite characters I had ever written, and a lot of the beta readers and my agent and my editors kept telling me pull back. They were like, "You need to take."
They are wrong.
I wanted to make him very smarmy, and he was also comic relief, but a lot of people were like, dude, that's just not.
Like you can't be like, oh, haha, he might have sexually assaulted a bunch of women.
And I never sexually assaulted anybody. I don't want to get on that spectrum.
Exactly.
We had inappropriate relationships.
Yeah.
Inappropriate
workplace relationships.
Workplace relationships.
Great power imbalance. They're absolutely inappropriate, 100%. But they were consensual. And so I don't want to place anything on the spectrum. But one thing I do want the reader, and there's no spoiler here, to look at things is like how things were handled in terms of how women were treated then versus how they're treated now. Back then, there were a lot of people you didn't talk about it. A person could be beating their wife. A person could be sexually abusing people, and they're a bully at the workplace. You just didn't talk about it. You looked the other way, as opposed to now. We got WikiLeaks, Twitter, Me Too, all of these things where we do talk about it. And I wanted to watch.
Thank goodness.
I wanted that spectrum to exist there. And I wanted people to be on that spectrum, Dan Decker versus some of the various people from the 70s, and watch how those people interplay. And so the question is, Dan Decker's sexual activities better or worse than him is not the question we're asking. It's how society is reacting to those different ways that women were treated and the bad guys that did those things.
Yes, I have so many things I want to shout, but I can't because they're all spoilers. But yes, the Venn diagram of some of your characters have like an overlap. But again, I love what you just said, the way society is reacting to a Dan Decker who is very problematic, but not a criminal per se versus
per se.
Yeah. Versus things in the 70s, it was like the Wild West.
And the things you hear about it. I mean, like, especially doing that work with the long dance, like in the long dance, you know, you would hear people tell you stories about, you know, just interactions in hospitals. Cause we interviewed a lot of nurses and they would talk about surgeons, and they were like, you know, when surgeon came into the room, women had to give them their seats. You know, they had to stand up and get out of their seat. They were nurses. They've been working all day so that this doctor could sit down. Doctor could hit somebody. The doctor could punch a nurse. And that's
so what? Yeah.
And that's
the doctor. And of course, they were all men, so you didn't have to worry about this wasn't a woman who was doing that. But then you even had points where it was talked about in the book, and this isn't a spoiler because it's not talking about anybody in specifics, but things that happened back then, if they were reported, but that rapes weren't really, even if they were reported, they were just told, well, you shouldn't have been there. You shouldn't have been out there. You shouldn't have been asking for that. And so that even them try to find things like patterns within some of these stuff. It's hard to find patterns if things weren't being reported, or if they were reported, they weren't recorded. So if you don't report, you can't record. And if you don't record, you don't have a record.
Yep. And absolutely. And then all these years later, when all you have, and I mean, like in our experience with the podcast, was you be looking through this file of everything that's it, and you'll find some note that some, you know, uniform, some officer wrote down something he observed, and it just goes into the pile, and it makes no sense at the time. But 50 years later, when you're looking at the big puzzle, you're like, this officer who wrote this little thing down
got it.
Has the key that was missing all along.
And he doesn't even know he has it, probably. Because
as opposed to the other thing that you were touching on, where it's like, if they had even written down the fact that this woman was assaulted in the woods, you know, there would have been a pattern, but they're not going to do it because what are you doing out there anyway?
Why were you in the woods at night?
Why were you there?
Like, why were you parking? Oh, you took your nylons off? Well, come on.
That whole line about the nylons and even how, I mean, it's not a spoiler because it's how they find the victim, and the whole idea of she didn't have her nylons on, and just the cop's reaction to that, even being sympathetic. And I'm just like, you know, the last time I wore nylons, I don't remember either because I hate the damn
oh my
thing.
God, I would take them off the second I could if I had to wear them at work.
There were times when I would get out of court and take my nylons off in my car because I hate the damn things, but there were judges who did not want bare legs in their courtroom.
So and every time I wear nylons, it just presses my face together, and it's hard to see unless you poke the eyes through it.
Eryk, that's why you end up in the lineup and they aren't sure who you are because you had the nylons over your head. And I used to have to wear them on my head too, but that was banned.
So Allison she's just admitted to being a band nerd. And what some people might not know is Allison was and always will be a lawyer. So when I say things like,
oh, my nylons off
stripper,
after
blah, blah, blah. And Allison's like, I'm a lawyer.
I could have been doing other things.
They're all good.
No, they weren't. But the point was just the propriety expected of people, that if you step out of line even a little bit, you can maybe get met with sympathy, but you can also be met with, well, now you asked for whatever happened to you because you weren't towing the societal expectation lines, and yikes. Just lots of yikes there.
Lots of yikes. And I'm gonna lean into the yikesness a little bit. I'm gonna lean into the yikesness with obviously, Eryk, you talked about the lead investigator on the case stumbling on this case right as he gets the diagnosis kind of his Alzheimer's disease. As somebody who has volunteered a lot at like Alzheimer's nursing homes, and I do have an elderly mother with dementia, you handled the Alzheimer's aspect of this story in every aspect startlingly real and heartbreaking and beautiful. And I'm not trying to pry at all, but it really seems that you had some kind of experience with that firsthand, especially because there's stuff with handwriting and patterns of handwriting that, and again, I'm not trying to be spoilery, that
no,
like those are things that if you don't have an intimate knowledge of somebody with Alzheimer's disease, you might not know those little things. So,
but I've gotten the letters that came from my grandfather where he wasn't calling himself by his name anymore, and his handwriting is completely different. So I can attest to that too.
Yeah.
Well, thank you very much.
It's weird to experience, even at a distance, because he was in another state and we were getting letters from somebody calling himself Tony. My grandfather's name was Harold.
Oh, wow.
Oh.
Wow.
Yeah.
Thank you. I did have, I have had family members that I lost to Alzheimer's. My mother had, she was showing dementia near the end. She had lost her battle with cancer.
Sorry.
I did a lot of research on Alzheimer's in the 70s. One of my best friends is a neuroscientist, and she got me a lot of papers on, I think I read.
I feel like we all should have friends that are neuroscientists.
Oh,
Every writer needs one.
She's a French neuroscientist, so she says things like neuroscience. But like, she got me all of these
neuroscience.
She got me these academic papers on what they knew about Alzheimer's in the 70s, so that way I could keep it as accurate as I could. Mm-hmm. But the most profound experience I had was when I was younger. There was a man who had Parkinson's, and he was basically my employer. He was he was a recruiter for Dartmouth, so he's a very eloquent, and he spoke for a living. And I had a job as a 14-year-old at his snow cone stand. And as he got worse and worse and worse, I watched him degenerate. His wife was pretty much taking over. He would stare into space. He had to have a rag with him all the time because it would drool, and he couldn't make words happen. And one day at the snow cone stand, I got caught with a girl that I had snuck into the snow cone stand while I was setting up. We were
oh
necking.
My God. I already love this story.
They show up.
That it's going to be sad.
They show up. And they bring, and the wife is mad at me for having a girl in this snow cone stand. And I tell her, I was like, no, that's my math tutor. My grades are really bad. If I don't get my grades up, I can't work at this snow cone stand anymore. And she left me with her husband. And her husband, it took a long time for him to get out because his speech was so gone. But he said, basically, was like, if I had a tutor that looked like her, I would have been very good at math. And I was like, holy shit, he is in there. He is in there. He has done nothing to, as a 14-year-old, you just think he's like, you don't think old people are real anyway when you're 14. But like, for especially this guy who had his motor functions were gone, his speech abilities were gone. But like all of a sudden in that moment, you realize he was a human and he's in there and he's fucking trapped and it's cruel. And I think it's tortured me my whole life.
I just like the progression, though, of
so beautiful
snow cone job to bartender, because I do think that is the natural progression of snow cones.
Oh, yeah, and we come up with our own flavors of snow cone. I came up with a pepperoni snow cone. And everyone told me that sounds disgusting, but after we put it, it's the #1 sold snow cone.
How do you make a pepperoni snow cone?
I don't remember
vegetarian.
I'm
so confused.
I am not a vegetarian, but
bacon bits?
I don't think there was any meat in it. We just did some funky stuff with existing flavors, and I don't think I could remember it.
You should ask your friend, the neuroscientist, to see if she would know.
She said, "Bon appetit."
Bon appetit. It is a yummy snow cone flavor. Like I want to know more about the snow cones, but
we're easily distracted by weird.
We're very distracted by food and drink. So Eryk. Don't. Now I'm thinking snow cones with like bourbon and like maple syrup.
I'll tell you, true Texas sad stories. My snow cones. I lost my snow cone stand in a tornado. No lie. No lie.
Okay, you actually had a scene, and I'm going to call you out here. You had a character asking in a barbecue restaurant for butter beans, and then succotash comes out, and butter beans are not in succotash. Those are different items. Please explain the discrepancy.
I don't think I know the difference between lima beans and butter beans. I think if you put them in front of me, I'd be like,
you'd just be like,
butter beans.
I don't know. It's like a lineup of beans, and you could just be like,
growing up, I hated lima beans because they were dry and not very good. Butter beans were thicker, and they're almost always, at least when you get them Southern style, and how you would have gotten them in a good barbecue restaurant is a lot of times they're soaked, and a lot of times they have like either ham
or foodie.
Or bacon in them, and they're good and they're warm, and they're kind of like a cousin, a more savory, less sweet than say a baked bean. Whereas succotash, if I'm remembering correctly, it's lima beans and corn, and those two things are an ungodly combination that no one likes. And it's fun to say suffer and succotash, but it's not fun to eat it. So he's
did you take notes on this part?
If you get some good succotash though, and like I know I was eating at Allen's Sons, which is out there in Chapel. It was out there in Chapel Hill. It's closed now, and they had butter beans in their succotash. And if the stuff was fresh, you would ask them every day, you know,
Like,
when I go in there, I'd be like, hey man, what's the story of the succotash? They're like, get it today, you know, it's really, really fresh.
So what was in their succotash? Was it butter beans instead of lima beans?
It was, I know that's what the lady told me, butter beans. Like it says on site, I don't think I could differentiate between, if you told me these are butter beans and they're really lima beans, you fool me.
I really want to do a bean lineup.
Let's do a blind taste test in a succotash and see like
we're gonna Thing is though, I don't want to make anybody eat succotash if they don't have to, because it's
good, dude.
I guess maybe the way my mother made it, because it may be very different. The Pennsylvania Dutch things and the way we got them may not have been the same way that
Pennsylvania Dutch and like good Southern cooking are very
they're not similar. But it is the same as my grandmother, different grandmother was the one who, when I was a vegetarian, always convinced me it was fine because they had ham salad, and I had to tell her that's not a vegetable, Grandma.
Yeah, well, don't yuck somebody's yum, because people try to tell me macaroni and cheese ain't a vegetable, and I will fight. I will fight.
I'm not going to yuck on that, but
I will.
We're going to have some discussions about your food pyramid and possibly your cholesterol.
Dude, macaroni and cheese is my political affiliation, my sexuality, and my gender. You know, like
I can accept
oh my god,
I love that.
Mind. Now I want that to be my BoucherCon t-shirt. It's not just going to be F, one of the characters in your book that I'm not going to say because I don't want to spoil why I don't like her. But macaroni and cheese is my gender, my political affiliation, and my sexuality. Yes, please.
Yeah, that's fair. It's amazing though, but I do remember my mother being very offended that my sister liked Kraft box macaroni more than her Betty Crocker homemade.
But here's the thing, Kraft macaroni and cheese is freaking delicious. I grew up really poor.
It's a different vegetable, honestly. It's like the difference between lima beans and succotash.
I actually grew up on the generic box macaroni and cheese because we couldn't even afford the Kraft, and now like Kraft doesn't even taste good to me. Like I get the generics, you know. I like to make my own, but in a pinch, get off the work at the bar, 1 o'clock in the morning. Oh, I'm hitting that box. Box of macaroni and cheese.
Yeah, I've had this. We've had this conversation, I think, with Sean Cosby too, where it's just like, you know, when you grow up on like government cheese wheels and the generic like box macaroni and cheese, they're like, then when you have like something like Kraft, you're like, oh my gosh,
different.
Speaking of Mr. Cosby and macaroni and cheese, I have driven 20 minutes out of my way to pick up macaroni and cheese for his wife. Because when she comes down, she's like, I hear there's good macaroni and cheese down here. I was like, yeah, there is, but it's way out there. I'm happy to go get it.
You're gonna get it.
Because if someone loves macaroni and cheese as much as I do, yes, I'm driving to go get it. It's my passion.
That is also now your tribe. You're like my tribe.
My tribe is macaroni and cheese. Yeah. So where is your bar again? It's in like North. I'm like, how far is that from me? It's like 20 hours.
My bar is gonna have a macaroni and cheese cook-off contest. I'm just gonna be the judge. That's it. I'm gonna trick the entire town to bring me macaroni and cheese so I can judge it.
And it would also be awesome to somehow serve like flights of macaroni and cheese.
Okay, so there were places we did not end up going with.
I know. I'm just gonna say
when we got married, we did not go with this venue, but one of them had as like an appetizer course. It had a mashed potato bar with like toppings and all that.
Yes.
And we were this close to going with it just because of that. Because I'm just like, so here there's mashed potatoes somewhere with toppings. And of course we had to go with a place that actually accommodated our size group rather than like we'd have to cut people.
I would invite less people.
Yeah, if it was a mac and cheese topping place, I'd have been like, all right, hey, look, how much do we really like all these people?
Well, like, do we really need our parents there?
They started doing like the whole pulled pork with mac and cheese, and I did that until I read Josh Malerman's Pearl, and now I can't do that anymore because I don't eat pork anymore. Thanks a lot, Josh. You ruined pork for me, but it was really good while it lasted.
You can do it with beef brisket.
You know what? I still eat beef, so I could totally do it with brisket. Yeah. I won't. He better not write anything about cows, or I'll be mad.
Don't read it if he does.
I won't. No, if there's like a haunted cow, just don't read it.
Haunted cow.
Haunted cow. Don't read that.
No.
So Eryk, I will say, Something Bad Wrong is listed as Just Keeler book 1.
Yeah, I noticed that. So spoiler, I guess you aren't telling Just Keeler.
Like just lives through it apparently. So what's going on? Is there another Just Keeler podcast book?
Yeah, they asked me to put one together, and
I know it's like we can't talk about what we can't talk about, but
Yeah, they asked me to put one together. I definitely gave it a college try. I turned it in. We'll see. We'll see what needs to happen there. So I've written something.
We want to read it.
I've written it. We'll see. We'll see who all likes it. We'll see if what they want done, and it's a process. Those folks at Thomas and Mercer are really good at what they do. So I feel like I'm in good hands, and I can't wait to see their notes.
Yes, you are in good hands. The cover of your book is stunning.
I was blown away by that. I thought they did a great job.
Yeah, I know. Like, we have the ebook, so I could show you my Kindle, but it would just be shiny. And
I do the graphics for the show sometimes, and I'm like, I'm having trouble matching the colors here because it's different than the colors that I stole the picture of Eryk and then the sunset, and I'm messing everything up. And Jen, who actually has like a graphic design background, is like, this looks fine, you're good. I'm like, I don't know what I'm doing most of the time. I thought it looked great. But I love that cover, and I didn't want to overwhelm the cover because the cover is like subtle and the little lines under some of the letters, and I almost want to put punctuation in there, but there's no punctuation, which just makes it even more painful, which I like. Something
I love this. Something
bad, comma, wrong. This is a no, something bad.
Yeah, I heard that phrase when we were working on the long dance. There was a woman we interviewed, and I'd never heard it before, and she said the phrase, she was like, that's the moment when I knew that something had gone wrong, something bad wrong. And I could never unhear it. And then after that, I would hear someone say it in a different context, or someone saying it, but that was the first time I heard it. And I just remember thinking, damn, that's a heavy statement. That's one that stuck with me.
It's great.
And you go ahead, Jen.
Oh no, I was just going to say, see, I loved the title, and I didn't know if it was necessarily going to play a part in the book per se, other than obviously everything we're reading was like, this is something bad wrong. Like, and then eventually you do hear those words, and I was just like,
well, the original title was A Bad, Bad Wind. Because I like a bad wind's gonna blow. Was what I had in my mind, but a younger person that I was friend with was like, oh, it sounds like you're writing about a fart. And I was like, okay. All right, let's
is this younger person 7? Because that's what my 7-year-old would say. He like farts.
27, but still, it's young enough.
Similar.
And I was like, well, all right, let's go back to the drawing board on the title.
Yeah, we don't need my really like beautiful crime book about Alzheimer's and a cold case and fate to be a book about farts.
No, what I was going to say was there was actually a phrase that you used several times that I go, this must be a Southernism that I don't know. But the phrase "do what" as what now? Because like it's like almost like a come again. But I've never heard that before, and I'm going, how come I've never heard this before? And do Southerners really talk like this?
Oh yeah, I've heard that. There's a lot of things. Like a lot of times when I'm telling a story, I'll get the story out, but then I'll go back through it and I try to imagine my father telling this story, my father telling this story at a bar over a beer, which is a lot of fun to do. It's a real exercise in imagination because my father doesn't tell stories, he doesn't go to bars, and he doesn't drink beers.
I know. I was going to say, oh my God,
I have to do some mental jam.
Exercise, but I'm like, my dad hated people and was scared of them because he fought in Korea, and he like basically spent his entire like our lives in like the basement, like hiding. But like, horrible. Oh my God, he was it's fine, and I love my dad, and he's a huge inspiration for a lot of my characters. But he was also called Big Jim.
Big Jim from Korea, fighting in Korea.
And I was like, I am having an episode.
I was waiting for you to tell me like that you couldn't keep reading.
I had to tap out.
That you were having too many issues, but
I was like, this is checking all of my boxes. All it needs is a haunted hotel near the
somebody
ocean.
Drowns.
And somebody drowns.
That's part 2. That's part 2.
Part 2. It's a drown in the ocean. No, and I love that you did that though, because people from different regions have different ways of talking and things. And my parents are from Pennsylvania, but then they've been out here, and my dad reverts into it sometimes. And their phrases he says, he says, he says, and I'm like, what the heck word are you saying? Because it's not even English anymore. And I'm just going, Dad, what is that? And apparently it's a Pennsylvania thing. That's all.
But there in Pennsylvania, that's where they say water. You drink some water.
My mother was a substitute teacher for years, and there were words that like she couldn't do spelling tests for kids because they wouldn't know water, orange, Orange.
Do they? Is Pennsylvania
Yins is the other side. The Yins is I want to say more the Pittsburgh side, but I have some relatives who do the Yins. I'm like, I never heard the Yins, but we do some of the Penadutch, bad order of words, like throw the cow over the fence.
Oh yeah, I'm French New England, so we will say things like throw me down the stairs, my shoes.
Yeah, it's like, thanks, Yoda.
And you're like,
so I love that stuff. I love going to a different part of the world and finding out, especially in America, like, how do they do their barbecue? Like, everybody does their barbecue different.
Thing, honestly.
Yeah, you go to Western Kentucky and they do it with goat. You do it in Alabama, they serve a mayonnaise sauce. You know, everybody does their barbecue different. And then those little verbal tags, little verbal tags they do are so interesting. So it's fun to like introduce a character from Philadelphia or from Pennsylvania and have them say some of those things like, "Oh, put some Jimmy's on my ice cream," or like, you know, these little things that you don't ever hear.
Yeah.
And so people know, oh, he's really from Alabama.
Yeah, exactly. I love it.
And that is true because, like, I haven't gotten to do as much travel since I've had kids. But before, like, for me, the number one thing about travel is the food and trying that. And my dad recently, his company's taken him different places, and he recently had a different location for their national get-together. And it was in a different part of the world than he's usually going to. And it was known for their barbecue. I'm like, did you try their barbecue? And he said, it wasn't very good. I'm like, no, that was the only reason to even go to that state. And he's just like, I'm sorry, it was a letdown. I'm like, well, now I don't feel like
God, now I kind of want to ask, but I don't want you to shame a whole state's barbecue.
I won't remember anyway. I just know it was usually in Chicago, and it wasn't in Chicago. And not that Chicago is known for the barbecue, but he was going someplace that I thought would have had good food, and it
Chicago got their Italian beef though.
Oh, like, they had good stuff, but it wasn't a place that I would think of for barbecue.
I walked 20 miles for some Italian beef.
But when I was in Texas, I did have good barbecue, and that was not the only time I was in Texas. But when I was there visiting my sister, I had some very nice barbecue places where, like, the pit actually will make your eyes water because there's just smoke everywhere. Because they're like, we're gonna smoke it till it's cooked. We're not gonna use fire, just smoke.
I feel like all of my experiences of Texas were ballroom dance competition where I didn't eat anything because I was wearing like a Latin dress and I was spray tanned. And then so I didn't eat anything. I think I just drank like vodka for like 4 days. And then like every other time I've just been like stranded in an airport, and the same thing. I just like drank vodka.
I was going to say, how do you remember these trips?
I remember ordering a vegetarian meal in Texas at the dance competition. It was an entire plate of just asparagus. Other people on their plates that had like meat and stuff had rice and salad and everything, and I literally just got like steamed asparagus. Yeah. And I'm like, I love it. I have a picture of me somewhere laughing with like a glass of vodka or something in my hand, just like, I guess this is what I'm eating.
That's all you're gonna get now. See, now I just want to know wherever you were getting the mac and cheese from, and I'm gonna be like, I would like that mac and cheese, a side of that vodka, and I don't mind the asparagus. It's a great side.
Mix the asparagus into the macaroni and cheese.
Yes,
I do that. Yeah, that'll work.
Because I'm just like, yes, duh. So okay, so we went off the rails with like mac and cheese and everything.
It was my fault. There was food involved.
That's okay. There's food involved. Eryk, you have been amazing. We loved you. We love this book, Something Bad Wrong.
Thank you so much, man. I'm going to use those words right there as my ringtone for my phone.
Like, we love it. Like, honestly, it like shook me to the core. I very rarely like take to the interwebs and just like post a like crazy thing of like, oh my gosh,
you need to read this one.
But I was overcome last night, and I had to.
Yeah, and I really wish we could talk about the book more, but there are so many spoilers. Like, I didn't even want to say about like the Alzheimer's because I wasn't sure that was something that we were supposed to know because you don't know going in. It's an early enough reveal, and there are so many other twists, but it's just like when Jen had one gasp, I was like, just wait. And there are so many that I don't.
And that's when I just started like live texting you while I was reading it. I'm like, oh, blah happened.
And I'm like, keep reading. Yeah.
So Eryk,
thank you.
We will, in our show notes when this gets like republished, we will talk about the second issue of your magazine, which is
Dark Yonder.
Dark Yonders. I'm like, I know it's the name of your bar and something sad. Ugh. Yes, Dark Yonders. Love it. I'm gonna come to North Carolina and just
Please.
so you know, I love a good Sazerac. So
got you. We make one. We make a good one. Use the Rittenhouse rod.
I just want macaroni and cheese.
I know, like, and
I
a
got
flight
you there
of
too.
macaroni and cheese.
I'll get you a big steaming plate of macaroni and cheese and some Sazeracs. How's that sound?
Do those even go together?
We'll call it.
We could call it the VOX VOMITUS.
Yes. Yes.
I feel like that is really like
that
two
is our show.
Sazeracs and a flight of macaroni and cheese.
Sazerac and 3 shots of macaroni and cheese.
It's definitely vomitous something. I love it. Eryk, thank you so much. Everyone who's watching this
Jennifer,
live, if you are watching the replay, we are off next week. But the following week we have, is it Amanda Jayatissa?
Yeah, I think we have Amanda, which means we may be going at a little later time. So check everything, because
later and or way earlier. She is in
3
Sri
a.m. for
Lanka.
her. It's Sri Lanka, and she does not have to get up at 3 a.m. just to talk.
Yes. So
we don't want her to.
So sometime within the next 2 weeks, Amanda Jayatissa, and we will see you all then. Until then, thank you all.